Okay, so here it was my dilemma. Turns out my saw doesn't have the clearance to cut this in half, and therefore I was not able to make uh, quite the line that I wanted. So what I've done is I actually used my portable bandsaw to cut small holes, a straight line, um, and then I used a drill just to uh, cut the intervening sections, or at least rough it out, and then I'll just probably just take my jigsaw to it, just because I need to split this board in half and make it into a workable piece that I can then take to my table saw, or not table saw, my new bandsaw. So that's what we're doing. And okay, so the jigsaw actually made quick work of this. So now I get to use the bandsaw for the rest of the cuts. So I'm gonna plane this by hand just to get all the surfaces uh, level. This is going to be for the neck of the guitar. Nice and flat. I'm going to plane the top of this too, just so we know it's flat. Hello. So what I have here now is I have the outline of the head, of the neck, um, transposed to where I want it on this piece of lumber. Now I'm going to mark out the areas where I want to have the truss rod placed. Right here is the nut line, so I'm going to want to put it right there, and then we're going to route out the channel for this Alright, so we're going to do this thing called the crazy glue and masking tape trick, where we're going to put crazy glue, we're going to put masking tape on both sides of surfaces, and then affix it to each other with some crazy glue, uh, cyanoacrylate, and that's going to give us good lateral pressure without causing some residue that you'd get with double-sided sticky tape. Um, Works great. I've used it several times now. It works fantastic. So um, we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so I have both sides masked off, taped up with masking tape, and I have my super glue. This is medium or gap filling, so it's going to be a little slower, but not really super slow. And then this is the accelerant that we're going to use. So super glue on one side and accelerant on the other side, and then what we're going to do is we're going to line this up with our channel in preparation for routing. And you always want to kind of make sure that you do a dry run just to make sure that you're happy with how things sit. So, and I've got my nut line marked out too. That's really important. So, here we go. And so lines are super important. I had the center line marked out on where I wanted, plus onto the template as well. So lined everything up, and now I'm just applying pressure to make sure that bond holds. Just like with if you're using wood glue for joints and such, there can be a little bit of floating, and that's why you have to be careful in the first initial period where you put down the template. It might bond crooked, and then you got to take it apart. But the beauty about this trick is that there's good lateral pressure for this for our application when we're using the router. Good lateral pressure, but you can pull it off and it comes off cleanly with very little residue because of the adhesive on the masking tape. Okay, so I've got the router set up. I've got the depth set up. Well, maybe a little bit on the short side just in case, and then we'll check the depth once we've made our full cut. So first things first, we're going to use our ear protectors and our goggles to be safe, and we'll go from there. Okay, now we're just going to take this off, and for this super glue masking tape trick, you just lift straight up And the template comes off, and you've got your channel for the truss rod routed. The only other problem is that this is fatter on this end, so I am going to have to chisel out a little wider and deeper channel on this side, but this looks just right. So I'm going to square up this end of the truss rod channel. I'm just going to use my chisel. There, now we have a square end instead of a rounded end. Now on this side, it's a little different. This side is a little fatter too, so we're going to need to widen that channel. It's also a little deeper, so we're going to have to make that a little deeper as well. So the last time I did this, I didn't have a 1/4 chisel, and it went so slowly. I was using screwdrivers, and it just took very long. This is going to take not so long, so I'm very happy about that. Okay, so this is the channel that I have ultimately made. You can see that right here I've taken out enough material and recessed it to allow for the flare in thickness and in depth of the truss rod. Now I'm going to just slip this in, and you can see it's nice and flush. I actually had to reroute it a little bit, and then I took a little too much, so I had to actually plane this down with the planer, with the hand plane, just to get it a little bit more closer. I didn't want a whole lot of space in between. You don't want that truss rod flopping around in and out of the truss rod cavity, and then your neck's going to be rattling, and you don't want that either. So, all right, here we go.